Hello, I'm Phyllis Dickerson, the CEO of the African American Mayors Association. Today I'm joined by my co-host, Mayor Van Johnson from the great city of Savannah, Georgia. And our guest for today is Mayor Byron Brown. Today we're going to be talking about the cost of dealing with the aftermath of an active shooting. And so, Mayor Brown, tell us, is your city healing right now?
We're a strong and resilient city coming through the mass shooting, the act of domestic terrorism on May 14th, 2022 was difficult for our community. It was very challenging, very painful. 10 precious members of our community were killed, 3 others wounded. A white supremacist traveled more than 3 hours to come into our community with the goal of killing as many Black people as possible. The community rallied around itself, rallied around the families of the victims, lifted each other up, and we are healing, but the process is different for everyone. And it seemed like so many people in our city, even though we are a city of about 280,000 people, had some kind of connection to the people that were killed, wounded, or experienced this tragedy, this heinous crime firsthand.
Mayor, thank you so much for joining us. And I just wanted to tell you, and I wanted to know how you were doing. It's been a hell of a year for Buffalo. I mean, beyond the active shooting, beyond the horrific weather that we all watched during the holidays, beyond a young Buffalo Bills player literally dying on the field, and the country praying for him, and then of course now the fact he's doing better, and the Bills are at the same time kind of pushing through. A mayor is in the middle of all of that. And so I wanted to know how you were doing, because the fact is that different people were on different teams, but you're on all of those teams as it relates to that. So how are you holding up?
Mayor, I'm doing well. Buffalo is a very loving community. I mentioned the fact that the community wrapped its arms around each other, just like we embrace the families of the victims and the witnesses and those that were injured. So many members of the community, near and far, have embraced me as well. I've felt the prayers, I've felt the strength coming from so many people throughout the community, and I'm doing well. And that's what leadership demands. You have to stand strong, you have to stand tall, and work with others in your community to get through challenging and difficult times.
I was wondering, I was praying for you myself. I mean, I'm like, what chapter of Revelation are the Buffalo dealing with this week? Because it'll just seem to be something. And of course, like I said, you're the nexus of all of that. People are in their moments of weakness, look to their mayor for strength. And I'm watching you on these national outlets. I'm trying to, doing what all mayors do, kind of, sneaking around, looking at what's happening in Buffalo through your local outlets. And there you are, standing strong, being a pillar of strength and hope. And so just wanted to congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
We all take leadership lessons from other mayors. And so
yes, we do.
Been that. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
So unfortunately, I grew up in a city that had an active shooter also, right? And we've talked about this before.
Yes.
So it's a horrible moment in life when you get that call. So walk me through what happened that day. Like you were at home or you were doing whatever, and then you get the call. What were you doing that day?
So it was a beautiful day in Buffalo. Weather was fantastic. It was May 14th. It was an idyllic day. Children were riding their bicycles. People were going about their normal lives. I was at a park in the city with my great nephew and great niece. My wife and I have been helping to raise these young family members. They were 4 and 5 at the time, their first T-ball game. And I was there at their T-ball game and got a call from the police commissioner that there was an active shooter situation and that several people had been shot at the Tops on Jefferson Avenue. I immediately told my family that I had to leave the game and I had to get to the Tops as quickly as possible. And with the police officer that is assigned to my security detail, we rushed over lights and sirens to the Tops on Jefferson. And as we were driving over, more information came in on, 3 people shot. No, 5 people shot. 8 people shot. And could not process at that time what possibly could have been going on because we've never seen anything like that in the city of Buffalo. When I got there on the scene, the shooter had already been apprehended. The Buffalo Police Department responded in less than 2 minutes and were able to take the shooter into custody without incident. The police had already set up a command post in the parking lot of the Tops. It only took me about 10 minutes to get there. So the speed and precision of the Buffalo Police Department and other agencies was just amazing. And as I came in through the parking lot, I had to pass 3 bodies on the ground in the parking lot that were covered with protective sheets. So it was a shock to the system from the first call to walking to the police command post.
And so at that moment, do you say the people that are covered, do you think, is that my relative? Is that somebody I know personally? Like, what's going through your mind when you're walking through there?
As I mentioned, it was a shock. I did wonder who these precious people could be. The store is about 10 blocks from where I live. My family and I shop there from time to time. Friends shop there. People that I know work there. But again, maintaining calm, got to the police commissioner to get an update on what he knew. And at that time, he said there was one shooter. They determined the shooter was engaged by police, surrendered, brought into custody, removed from the scene by the time I got there, and that 10 people had been killed and 3 had been injured. And at that time, they were still processing the reasons, which came together very quickly because this shooter was videotaping what he did on social media. So there was no doubt that the person was guilty, that the person was responsible, no doubt who did it. Weapons were recovered quickly, vehicle was recovered quickly. The shooter was wearing body armor, and the police did an amazing job in talking him down. They did not want him to go back into the store where he could potentially have killed more people, and the police engaging him so quickly stopped him from killing more people on that street, Jefferson Avenue, a pretty busy street in the city of Buffalo. And again, his goal, we later found out from a manifesto that he put out, was to kill as many Black people as he possibly could.
How do you deal with the flow of information? You have all of these social media reporters, And of course, I'm sure your law enforcement doesn't want to put out anything until they really have a handle of what's going on.
Right.
But then they have, Facebook, Instagram saying, hey, I'm down here. There's 100 people died. Because what I heard first was, it was 50 people that were killed, and people on these social media things. How do you manage the need for people to know, with the need to get it right, and the pressure that people are putting on you, saying you need to know something now?
The need to get it right comes first, and we want to make sure that we're putting out accurate and factual information. So we don't want to jump the gun. We don't want to put out misinformation. As we were out there trying to process the scene, trying to get a clearer understanding of what happened, there were family members arriving on scene, wanting to know, my family member was shopping, are they okay? My family member was working here, are they okay? My family member was on the street, are they okay? So you have to try to take the time to comfort people, to console people, but at the same time, make sure that the information, because you're dealing with people's lives, to make sure that the information is accurate.
Did you feel pressure in that, in terms of, how long was it between, I would say, from the time that you arrived there to the point where you were able to get at least a statement out about what had occurred?
Yeah, because before you answer that, most people don't know this, but the media, national media, is already on the ground or en route before you even have your report together. So what's that time frame? Because they're already calling.
Right, and breaking news now, and
So, we try to put out bits and pieces of factual information. It's an active crime scene, still under investigation. People are still in the store. Bodies are on the ground outside. Bodies are inside the store on the ground. So you're trying to get out information timely, but at the same time, you want to treat the people who have been killed and injured as humanely as possible. You don't want people walking through that scene. You don't want people seeing certain things because it was a horrific scene. It was very difficult for trained law enforcement to see people who had been, in some cases, shot multiple times. So the police set up a perimeter and kept the community at a distance, kept the media at a distance, and wanted to do their work in a dignified and respectful fashion, recognizing that people had been killed, that people were looking for their loved ones, and knowing that there was a shooter in custody, and not wanting to do anything that would enable that individual to potentially not be brought to justice swiftly.
The other thing that most people don't know is the cost of an active shooter, like the money that the city or municipality has to spend on overtime hours and all the other things that come along with it. Can you talk about, one, the cost of that, and two, what are you lobbying the federal government to do to kind of offset those costs?
Cost was significant, a significant police response. Fire department had to respond. The Department of Public Works had to respond. We calculate all total that the cost for just those departments, police, fire, Department of Public Works, was over $555,000. So it is a significant cost. Then there are other costs that are hard to calculate. The cost to families, the cost of funerals, the costs of people traveling in for funerals. So we have been lobbying the federal government to completely reimburse the cost to the city. Fortunately, we had corporations and individuals that came together that set up a fund for the families. Much of that money has been dispersed to families now because when a loved one is lost like that to homicide, a mass shooting, an act of domestic terrorism, you can't prepare for that. There's no way to prepare for that.
How do you create the assurance that this is not a terrorist event or there are not multiple shooters? Because all of a sudden people are very, very scared. Obviously, you're in the middle of a highly populated area, and again, rumors are all over the place. You said there are people who are down and people who might see who is down. You can't necessarily say X number of people are dead yet. You want to do notify Ken, but yet Ken is being notified by informal means. How do you keep a sense of calm, not only for yourself, but to assure people around that, this is isolated, it's not a terrorist attack, and that people are safe, we have this under control?
Police responded swiftly. Other agencies responded swiftly as well, working with the Buffalo Police. So the FBI came in very quickly. State Police came in quickly. The County Sheriff's Department came in very quickly. And all of those agencies working together with our Buffalo Police determined very quickly that it was one individual that was the shooter, that was responsible, that there were no other people on scene. We had to clear the supermarket to make sure that that was the case. So SWAT, Buffalo SWAT, went through that market with a fine-tooth comb to make sure there was no other shooter, to make sure that there were no other victims that were somewhere not easy to see. So, speed, precision, accuracy is very important in situations like that. And being able to work in a coordinated fashion with other law enforcement agencies. And we're fortunate that in Buffalo we have a very strong law enforcement partnership with federal, state, and county agencies. And all of that helped us to process things quickly. Now, I'm sure there are still some family members and members of the community that felt it wasn't quick enough, but to try to do it right, to make sure that everything was done properly, it took some time for the proper identification to get to family members who waited a long time, and that had to be painful for family members. I recall one of the family members that I saw on scene was my former fire commissioner, Garnell Whitfield. And he's just so active and involved in the community. When I saw him out there, I figured as a citizen and as our former fire commissioner, he was there to help. And I said, Commissioner, hi, are you here to help in this situation? And he said, well, Mayor, I am here to help, but I can't find my mother. She went to see our father at the nursing home. She was going to stop into the supermarket, and no one has heard from her since, and her car is still in the parking lot. I could see the anguish and the pain on his face, and it was gut-wrenching in that moment, but I had to hold it together for him and for what was happening at that time.
Was his mom okay?
His mom was one of the victims.
Wow. And you touched on this about the mental health piece, especially for first responders, right? And while they run the drills and they practice on the SWAT and all of that, it is nothing like when you have an active shooter and you're on there on the scene like that, and nobody really understands what these assault weapons do to the body when they're shot. So what were you able to do in your city to deal with making sure that your first responders were okay mentally?
The county is the human services agency for our city and for the larger county. They came in and provided mental health counseling for families, for employees of the store, members of the community. There were also mental health agencies in our community that came in and provided mental health treatment and services and counseling. We encouraged all of our first responders, police, fire, um, uh, the federal agencies, the state agencies, because as you mentioned, Phyllis, from an AR-15, the wounds are horrific. And I remember the police commissioner suggesting to me as I got on scene not to go into the store, because if you see that scene in the store,
Cannot see it.
you will never be able to unsee it. So mental health is huge. That is another area where we think there needs to be more resources. Uh, there probably needs to be ongoing mental health treatment for first responders, for family members, for witnesses. We are fortunate in New York State that as part of Governor Kathy Hochul's State of the State message, she has committed $1 billion additionally to mental health treatment in New York State, which is a major, major step in the right direction. But at the federal level and prior to that announcement at the state level, there just has not been enough money in the community, any community, for mental health treatment.
Mayor, you are high-profile mayor at the U.S. Conference of Mayors, and certainly one of our leaders at the African American Mayors Association. How has your association with both of these entities helped to prepare you, helped to sustain you for some of the challenges that you face?
Been able to go to a number of workshops and trainings through the U.S. Conference of Mayors over the years, through the African American Mayors Association. A lot of information that we get that we're able to review and process and learn from. It was also very comforting in those difficult moments hearing from so many members of the African American Mayors Association, hearing from member mayors of the U.S. Conference of Mayors, Phyllis, our CEO of the African American Mayors Association, one of the first people to reach out. Many of our member mayors are reaching out. Those calls, those texts, people saying that we are sending love and prayers. That makes a difference when you're going through challenging moments like that. So the training that you're able to get through these organizations, the support that you're able to get through these organizations makes a real difference in preparing you for things that you can't prepare for, and also comforting you in challenging times. And none of us know when we might go through a tragedy like we experienced in Buffalo on 5/14.
So, and people will say, and their critics will say, well, why have an African American Mayors Association? You have the U.S. Conference of Mayors. What would you say to them?
The U.S. Conference of Mayors, critically important. a long-standing organization for mayors in our country. The African American Mayors Association is an association of mayors whose lived experience is different than other mayors. The scrutiny that we face, the challenges that we face, while you're trying to lead a city, the discrimination that you face. So mayors that have that shared lived experience can relate to each other in ways that maybe other mayors cannot, which is one of the reasons that I think the African American Mayors Association is so critical.
Your dues are paid, right?
Yes.
All right. See,
So as we
Yeah, absolutely.
membership has its privileges.
Yes,
and
it
its
does.
responsibilities.
Yeah. So as we close, I've been asking all the mayors the same question at the end. What's your word for 2023? What's the word for 2023 and why?
I think the word for 2023, which I used a lot in 2022, is love.
Okay.
I think we need to show each other more love in our organizations, more love in our family, more love in our community. Mayor, you mentioned the critics and what the critics say. I think instead of criticizing, as members of the human family, we need to show each other more love.
Thank you.
AAMA means love, though.
There you go. There you go. Thanks everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.